Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video I have some architecture tips I consider to be really useful for reach guessing in GeoGuessr, and tips that I think that everyone who wants to be a pro at GeoGuessr should know, because I consider architecture to be a really underrated type of clue in GeoGuessr, uh, fairly under-researched within the community, and I personally think it should be appreciated a lot more because I feel like it's just really fun. So yeah, a bit of a disclaimer, architecture is one of those things that's never black and white. Like, it's kind of like architecture styles just kind of fade into one another. It's not like signage or country specific polls where it immediately changes once you cross the border. Um, it's kind of just a vibe, you know. It's never 100%, so it can be easy to get baited if you're not used to it, and yeah, just be careful when using it, and always combine it with other clues. But I promise you, it's very useful and very fun. So, uh, without further ado, let's begin. And my tips here are fairly European concentrated, just because that's where most of my knowledge is. But I've tried to spread around clues in other parts of the world as well. So yeah, let's start with the US. And one thing I found in New England, you have a lot of these very grey shingled roofs. You can see like these very like shiny tiles. Very New England, a very coastal New England thing. Nantucket is a kind of extreme example because you have it on just about every other house. It's like the very most vernacular shingled tile New England architecture you can get. But yeah, generally coastal areas of New England, maybe a little bit into Canada, like Nova Scotia as well. But yeah, generally New England coast kind of thing. And a lot of urban areas in New England, you get these very tall houses, very tall, kind of pointy roofs, often steps like leading upwards, and houses are kind of like tall and big and quite long towards the back. Like, again, with these sort of steps and like very pastel wooden houses, and yeah, New England is also generally very wealthy, so definitely good to watch out for this particular shape of house. You see a lot, and also in neighbouring areas of Canada as well, like Nova Scotia, you can see similar things. Um, Towards Midwest, I feel like Midwest, you get a lot of very any town America sort of style. You have like very grid layout streets. You have these sidewalks with this sort of grass between it, like concrete slab path, and uh, like just yeah, everything looks very square. Even the houses look kind of very um, kind of square, like evenly spaced out. Again, like New England, a lot of wooden sort of pastels, but the shape of the houses is often very different, especially the layout of the streets. But yeah, definitely these sort of pavements, something to watch out for in the Midwest, especially like Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, maybe parts of southern Ontario, Ohio, like, and broader areas of Midwest as well. But yeah, very Midwestern kind of style. Towards the south, or at least central south, or like southern Appalachians, a lot of the suburbs you have less of a pavement, and you have a lot like the houses are further back. A lot of the houses are like bungalows, like one-story houses. A lot of red brick. Not always red brick, but often red brick like this. But yeah, like you have a lot of this like grass and a lot of space in many Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, and this neck of the woods kind of suburbs. So yeah, definitely a vibe for this. Like you wouldn't really see that style so much in like New England or like Midwest. So yeah, especially these sort of long red brick bungalows. So moving on to Mexico, a good vibe for Western Mexico is this red brick. Um, Especially around Jalisco, I feel like is the main central area where you see a lot of red brick. But yeah, broadly Western Mexico or like areas west of Mexico City. Um, you can get it a bit further north as well. But yeah, broadly west, you see red brick, and broadly east and kind of everywhere else, and Puebla and south and lots of other places, you see more white brick. Um, And one thing I've noticed in Veracruz, shout out to GC actually, because I think I learned this from him. Lots of very bright architecture around Veracruz, around the east coast of Mexico. It's almost like very newly painted houses with fresh coats of paint. So like random bright houses in a kind of very lush green landscape, very Veracruz kind of thing. Moving on to Brazil, I have a couple of things. The far south, you get a lot more European, kind of German influenced architecture. And I feel like you get a lot of these wooden plank, vertical wooden houses. Kind of European style with shutters and these very like low slanted roofs. And this sort of black plank tiles, like brown plank tiles, like very almost very German, very very RGDS thing. Definitely be careful because you have a lot of sort of wooden houses towards Amazon, like Acre especially, and also other parts of the Amazon. But definitely something to look out for in the far south and especially RGDS. But yeah, also neighboring states, I guess. But yeah, definitely very very far south Brazil thing. One thing I've noticed a lot in northeastern Brazil, I'd say from coastal northeast, like here, all the way up to Belém, maybe Santarém a little bit, like less so the further west you get, but very like very old, thick, tiled roofs with random splodges of like lighter paint, like yeah, I don't know, the roofs just look kind of older, yeah, thicker, like they just look different to tiled roofs you see in the rest of Brazil. Definitely be careful though, because you do get a lot of random tiled roofs elsewhere. But the northeast ones specifically have a certain vibe, and I feel like they're especially useful in telling apart like Maranhão and Para from like Rondônia Acre, or like northeast from like further south, I guess. And I feel like the houses are often a lot kind of smaller, like lower ceiling and a lot closer to the road. I feel like northeast is sort of poorer, so yeah, it's got a different vibe to areas further central and further south. So yeah, but yeah, definitely pay attention to the roof. That's the main point I want to make. Let's move on to South Africa. We have KwaZulu Natal. You have these very round sort of huts, often straw, but not always straw. Like this one isn't straw, but yeah, these very round houses in South Africa. Very KwaZulu Natal. Maybe neighbouring areas like parts of Eastern Cape. There can be Beatty ones elsewhere, so definitely be careful. But yeah, very much this region of South Africa is the kind of centre of these houses, round houses. Yeah, let's move on to Europe. Let's do Spain. Southern Spain, you get a lot more whitewashed houses. I feel like with a lot of like yellow paint like this, very southern, especially towards Portugal. A lot of these sort of black balconies. Yeah, very southern. Other parts of southern Spain, but especially Andalusia. Further north, you get a lot more kind of red brick like this, especially around Valladolid. Red brick, more dominant in the north. In the north of the kind of dry-ish part of Spain, if that makes sense. I mean, Galicia and Asturias, etc., has its own vibe in its own, but yeah. And one really cool, this is one of my favourites, is Basque architecture. This is a very good example of Basque architecture. Main features to look for is these sort of low slanted roofs, timber framing, often like red paint, timber framing, or other colours like grey or green or other colours as well. And these sort of stone bricks in the corners and around the windows. Like again, you have these sort of stone bits in the corners, very Basque thing. The overall shape of the houses is just very different. Easy to confuse with the timber framing and stuff with like southern, like Alpine houses. So, but yeah, Basque has a really cool and really unique style. Also in like the Basque part of France, like yeah, basically around this sort of circle of the Basque country. You see that style? let's look at the UK. So one good thing for coastal eastern UK, looking for these red clay pantiled roofs, I'd say you get it in the eastern half of England, from like Essex up to like Fife, and an exclave around Somerset, kind of like around here as well, like this sort of circle where my cursor is. Uh, yeah, these red roofs, very, very common. You will see occasional random red roofs in lots of places as well, but especially if you see sort of older buildings with red roofs, you need to play a lot to just get used to it. But yeah, the style like up north obviously is very different. Like here, this is still in England, but it has more Scottish influence creeping in with like this stone, like very large stone bricks, and yeah, just very, very different style. But again, the main feature is red roofs like this. You want to send east, unless it's an exclave around Somerset, because that's like can be baity. Another good thing for England is the limestone belt, which stretches from kind of Bath, southern Cotswolds. You draw a line kind of up to Lincolnshire, up to the Wash. So this kind of belt, you get this golden kind of limestone. Golden limestone in a lot of houses, a lot of the architecture. And it can be very hard to tell apart like Cotswolds from like further north. But one thing I've noticed in some houses further north, you have a lot more of this like vivid cement. Again, it's like very golden, but you have this like vivid white cement between the bricks. Very much northern, like Northamptonshire, Lincolnshire thing, if you're in the limestone belt. So yeah, definitely something to pay attention to. Southeast, this is an area like I feel like I've rarely seen the architecture used, but this is like super common, this sort of tiled facade, like hanging tiled thing. In a lot of houses, again, you have like this sort of tiles here on the side of the south, very southeastern England, areas south of London, just around London. You see a lot of that. And again, this white kind of wooden wall, very southeastern thing. And the roofs are just very like, I don't know, the roofs are kind of like taller and deeper, and the shape is just a little bit different. Like, yeah, very different roofs in the southeast. Another example of a slightly different type of like tiling you get is like this with these curved circles, very southeastern thing, a little bit south central as well. But you wouldn't really see that towards like the deep west country or further north. So yeah. This black wooden kind of walls you get a lot in East Anglia, and you get a lot in the southeast generally. So yeah, a good tip to send either here or like south coast. Yeah, up to like Hampshire, Dorset as well. Very black wooden thing. France, we have red brick. Red brick you want to send downtown Belgium, especially if you see a lot of red brick. Be careful about like random red brick elsewhere and stuff, but generally if you see a lot of it downtown Belgium, the more you see. And in Belgium itself, obviously you get a lot of red brick, and elsewhere in like northwestern Europe. But if you know you're in France, yeah, you see this. That's where you send. France, we also have this German-influenced architecture in Alsace. Like this timber-framed housing, very German shutters, very colourful. Like look at all these really cool, colourful houses. Very similar architecture as well in southwestern Germany. But yeah, this bright blue I feel like is very Alsace / southwestern Germany. This bright blue paint you see a lot. And the kind of timber framing is a lot more colourful than you get. Like further north, it's a lot more kind of monotone. But here you get like brown and like more pastels and blues and yellows, and yeah, it's just a bit more colourful than other parts of Germany further north sometimes. Towards Frankfurt and like Rhineland, like this sort of central southern, you get kind of, so you can see a lot more of a monotone black and white color scheme creeping in because we're going further north, but you get a lot of these sort of maroon around the wall, maroon frames around the walls, very central. I've seen it a lot in France, like around Forbach as well, like close to Germany. But yeah, like maroon around the windows, and especially like you can see the bottom of houses, you have this like light brick, a light brown brick, very central Western German thing, Hessen, Rhineland-Pfalz, that kind of neck of the woods, and just a lot of maroon like this, maroon brick at the bottom, maroon brick here, and a mixture of kind of black and white color scheme. Here a bit of light blue, I guess, because it's still a bit southern, southwestern influenced, and these bright colors a little bit southwestern influenced here, but yeah. Generally, the further north you go, I feel like the colors become more dull. Like here you go towards the Ruhrpott area, so like Essen, Dortmund, Cologne, this sort of area. Like the colors aren't that bright and colorful. They're kind of still colorful, but it's like very dull colors, dull brown, kind of industrial, grays, whites, blacks. You don't have that bright blue, bright yellow. You get further south. And of course, like the further north, you get more red brick. A lot of people know that already. Red brick a lot in the northwest. But one thing to distinguish far north of Germany from other places, two things. Thatched roofing, very common. Schleswig-Holstein, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, parts of northern Lower Saxony. And this wall, this sort of rock wall, very Schleswig-Holstein thing, I'd say. Especially in people's gardens or around people's gardens with these large rocks making a wall, yeah. Just random rocks like that, very, very, very Schleswig-Holstein thing. Something in Bornholm, to distinguish Bornholm from Denmark. Very vernacular architecture, you get this sort of timber framing. You get timber framing in the rest of Denmark, but in Bornholm, I don't know, it's just kind of more colourful. You have a lot of this yellow, you have a lot of this deep red, but you still have this black timber framing a lot. And the houses are like very close to the road, like you can see the path is just really small. You won't get this all over Bornholm, like in some newer housing estates or whatever, but vernacular architecture, yeah. Very different from Denmark. Mainland Denmark, you wouldn't really see this red so much. You wouldn't really see this yellow on like every building so much, I'd say, but you still get like the timber framing in parts of Denmark, so yeah, be careful, but Bornholm has a vibe, is what I'm trying to say. Back into Germany, we have these arched kind of pillar things. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but this is shout out to Simi with his architecture series. I will link that in the description below. He's done some really cool videos on European architecture. I think he mentioned this on his like Czechia video, because it's also in neighbouring areas of Czechia. But you see these sort of arched things. Lusatia, which is this like small area around southeastern Saxony, yeah, and neighbouring areas of Poland and Czechia, close to the border. So, yeah, you look out for these arch things for that. And one thing for Germany, like communist era architecture in East Germany, is very much specific to Thuringen, Saxony-Anhalt, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, Brandenburg, Berlin, Saxony. So the former eastern part of Germany, when it used to be one country before the Berlin Wall. Yeah, you get like, you have to be careful because obviously you have random apartments in the west as well. But the style just looks very communist. Often it's kind of, sometimes it's like not being painted, it's kind of exposed with these like blocks. It's almost like building blocks on top of each other, and you have these like Like you can see like these lines around each window, like it's like just blocks stacked on top of each other. Sometimes it's been painted so it's not like obvious East German architecture, like it is here, but if it just feels very communist and yeah, um, a bit more like poor infrastructure as well, like the road is a bit cracked, like something like that. It's often the eastern part of Germany. Um, so yeah, one thing to note about like the wider eastern bloc of Eastern Europe, something that I feel like not many people know is the former Yugoslavian countries, so Slovenia up to North Macedonia. They just look different. Like I don't know like how to describe it exactly, but they have a lot more blinds like this. They have a lot more of these things, and it's just different. You don't have like in Bulgaria here. You have again these sort of blocks stacked on top of each other, and you have these balconies, very very similar to what you see in Romania or Russia, but in Serbia, Croatia, Macedonia, it just looks different. I don't know how to describe it, but definitely something to pay attention to, especially in like an NPZ rounds and stuff where you don't have other like language clues or whatnot. So yeah. Let's look at Poland before we look at Romania. Okay, Poland, Eastern Poland, I want to mention a couple of things. The first is very wooden houses like this, almost like similar to architecture towards Russia, towards Belarus, towards the Baltics. Very wooden, like wooden cabin architecture, very Eastern. But be careful because you kind of get it a bit central, but you wouldn't really send West Poland if you see architecture like this so much. Very, very specific. And these sort of corrugated iron roofs, probably more Eastern Poland. White brick, very Eastern Poland. Again, can be central as well, but just broadly Eastern Poland in general. But just be careful with it because Poland can be random sometimes. But yeah, Western Poland, sometimes you see more German influence in the architecture. But it can be very vague and very difficult sometimes. So Poland is notoriously difficult in the known to be difficult in the community to region guess. So yeah, but yeah, definitely look out for this. Romania. One thing I see a lot is people don't know the difference in the architecture between Western and like Southern or Eastern Romania, because Western can be very distinct, especially around Banat. You have like Austro-Hungarian influence, where the layout of the streets is like it's like you have this grassy area between the houses and the road, and you have these like driveways. Like every house has like a driveway like this, and sometimes you have these gutters going along. It's just a very Western Romanian thing, and Northern Serbian thing, and Northern Croatian and Hungarian thing as well. But for telling apart Western Romania from other parts of Romania, definitely a vibe and definitely really useful, and yeah, you can't really go wrong with it. A lot more red like tiled roofs in the west. I feel like more metallic corrugated iron roofs in the east, and the south can be a bit of a mix. And then you have Transylvania, which has a lot of like German influence in the architecture. Sometimes there's a lot of architecture I could talk about for Romania, but this is a big one I see missed out a lot in Romania. Turkey, red roofs, red tiled roofs, more west and central Turkey. If it's predominantly corrugated iron or like metallic roofs and just no red color anywhere, you go east, especially in a rural area, and you can just see houses in the background. If you see more white dominant like metallic roofs, yeah, generally a good sign for the east. But definitely be careful about red tiles. Definitely more west, but you can get it like Beatty ones further east and further central as well. But yeah, red roofs dominant, especially if it's like every single roof like this. That tends to be more west in Turkey. Generally speaking. Ukraine. Uh, you have, I mean, obviously, like Western Ukraine has a very, very unique architecture. But Eastern Ukraine, a lesser known one, Eastern Ukraine, you have around Kharkiv, Poltava, like this area, I would say. Maybe a bit towards Donetsk as well, like, yeah, generally just eastern areas towards the Russian border. Just very Russian style window shutters I've seen a lot, like these sort of decorative shaped shutters. Very Russian style, yeah. Even centrally, you don't really see that very often, even in like central Ukraine, so that's a very eastern thing. Very subtle and like not very well known thing, but can definitely be helpful if you're in like the Kharkiv area. So yeah, that's Ukraine. Russia, you have Dagestan, golden brick, a bit like the Cotswold brick, it's kind of golden coloured. Very, very Dagestan thing, and I feel like, yeah, these like very grand gates, like very southern Russian thing. But yeah, golden brick, very Dagestan specific thing. If you get these corrugated iron roofs, I would send around the Volga River, so around Astrakhan, kind of up to Volgograd as well. But especially towards Astrakhan, I'd say, yeah, very Volga River kind of thing. Especially if it's like white houses like this, very white, but with a corrugated iron that's orange. Orange is a key color. We're looking for this bright orange metallic roof. Yeah. Like it's not all white houses like this is sort of brick, but you still have this bright orange roof. Yeah, very much Volga River area. Oops. One thing worth noting is the area around Kazan, so Tatarstan and Bashkortostan especially, have more of a Muslim population than many other areas of Russia, excluding southern Russia. Southern Russia has a lot of Islam, but if you know it's not southern Russia, and you see like a mosque like this, so you have these kind of pointy roofs, very like mosque kind of shaped roof, like with the moon. If you know it's a mosque and not a church, that might be a good clue to send. It's not 100% because obviously you can get Muslims in random parts of Russia as well, like probably like random places in Moscow and stuff, but definitely worth considering Tatarstan and Bashkortostan if you see such a thing. One thing I've noticed a lot towards central Russia, I'd say broadly central Siberia, from like Urals up to like Chita, this kind of area. You have very square houses with like a trapezium roofs. It looks like a trapezium hat kind of roof. I think you have to be careful with this one because it's very subtle, and I feel like you can get random beta examples further west as well sometimes, but this can often be a really good way to tell apart, say, Tomsk and Komi and Arkhangelsk, which look very similar sometimes. It's just very square. Like, I feel like typical Russian houses are sort of longer, and towards the back they don't go as far, but this is like a lot more square shaped towards the back. Like the width and the length are a lot more equal, it feels like. But yeah, with this sort of trapezium roof like this, overhanging. But yeah, just be careful. It takes practice to get the vibe of it. But I've definitely found it useful sometimes. So yeah, what I want to say is be careful. But yeah, definitely worth looking at. India. Southern India, you have it, I think it's called Dravidian style, which is the area from like Telangana southwards. Just very different, like trapezium shaped temple to what you'd get further north, like this particular shape. Often decorative like this with all these ornamental figures, not always, but often. But definitely just look out for this particular tall shape. Temple is very, very southern India. One thing to note about Punjab has a very high Sikh population, so you have a lot of Gurdwaras, which are the Sikh temples. And they have this kind of dome. You often have, it's quite hard to see from here, but you have these like little little dome ornaments on the corners, and yeah, like these little domes, and sometimes these gates. Very Sikh thing, very Punjab thing, a little bit in Haryana as well, and just be careful about random Sikh populations elsewhere in India. Like Sikhism's not exclusive to Punjab, but it's kind of like 80-90% of the time it's going to be Punjab. So yeah, just be careful and always use other things. But if you think it looks like Punjab, it's kind of flat and like, yeah, like this flat and agricultural. Yeah, definitely worth considering. So one thing I've noticed, well, one thing I've learnt from Kodiak's video, shout out to him. I can't remember the channel it was on, but I will link in the description. He's done a really good video on Indonesia, which actually covers a lot of regional architecture around Indonesia. So I'll leave that to you guys to learn more about Indonesian architecture by linking that video. But I'll mention one thing I learnt from his video, which is these kind of curved roofs, like overhanging roofs, very downtown Malaysia. So what I mean by downtown Malaysia is parts of Indonesia, fairly close to Malaysia. So like West Kalimantan, like Riau Islands, like parts of Sumatra, especially like Eastern Sumatra, Northern Sumatra. Just yeah, anyway, like vaguely close to Malaysia, basically. So, but take that with a grain of salt and use it with other clues, but something that could be really helpful in deciding 50-50s. Cambodia, something I found useful. Red tiled roofs, send south. It generally works. Southern half of Cambodia. I feel like up here, like Siem Reap, you don't see that very often at all. Very southern thing, red tiled roofs. Philippines. The main thing I want to mention, I've come across a lot of these kind of straw woven patterned houses in Mindanao. It's not 100% reliable, but it works quite well a lot of the time. So be careful. Practice Philippines a lot to get used to how confident you want to be at it. But this works pretty well from Mindanao. I also feel like stilt houses, it's not an example here, but stilt houses, very Mindanao, very Palawan, very southern thing as well sometimes, but that's even less reliable, I would say, so be careful, but yeah. Especially these, like, intricate patterned woven straw, yeah. Very Mindanao thing. Japan, last but not least, we have Chugoku, which is this region between Yamaguchi and like Okayama Tottori. You see these red roofs with like ornaments, very red, bright orange roofs. They often look very bright orange from a distance, but yeah, you have like these ornaments. They look very traditional. Be careful of like random orange roofs elsewhere, and it takes practice to get used to whether they're the reliable like roofs or not. But yeah, generally it is a really good clue for Chugoku. I think occasionally like bordering areas of Kyushu close to Chugoku as well, but yeah, especially Yamaguchi, Shimane, Hiroshima, sometimes Tottori, Okayama as well. So, and the last thing I want to talk about is further north in Japan. I feel like you see less tiled roofs further north and a lot more of these kind of plasticky straight roofs, like straight slanted roof here, this overhanging straight thing here, like very square. Everything looks kind of square, plasticky roofs, and like that's a very, very northern thing. Hokkaido as well. But Hokkaido, I feel like you tend to get a lot more. I don't know how to say it, but it's like Western influenced architecture. They have like very American or very European influenced houses, but yeah. Northern part of Japan, more plastic roofs, but yeah, just be careful. Especially if you see a lot, then it's a good sign for sending north. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed these tips, and I hope you got something out of it. I really want architecture to be more appreciated, and that's why I made it this video. And love it if more people appreciated it and gave it a chance to research, because I think it's really fun, and I definitely do want to research more, like specifically into like Turkey. I want to look at a lot more, and Colombia as well, and like lots of countries I really want to learn. It's just one of those things that's like not, it's never black and white. It's not like signage and like black and white clues, but it's just a good way if you see like a specific feature, it leans you a certain way in your region guessing, and yeah, I love it. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.